Walk with me.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, those of you on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook platforms. Yeah, we're walking in the book of Jubilee. We're in chapter 33, and we ended at verse 12 to begin at verse 13. Let us pray. Oh, we thank you, Holy Creator. We thank you for all things that you've done. We thank you for your mercy and your favor. We thank you that you've got a plan for those who would obey your commandments, statutes, ordinances, and law. Yes, we know these things to be true. Yes, the situation of the world today is not good for those who see only with their eyes and not in the spirit, not with wisdom and not with discernment. Discerning the times is knowing the scripture. Yes. Not so much that you say, no anybody else says, but your word, the history and everything else, the prophecies, they all tell us what we should know and how to discern these things. And we ask you to help us grow in wisdom and in knowledge, even of you, that we might be worthy to be a part of what's about to come in you. Yes, and we thank God for those of you that have been with us ever since the beginning. Yes, we were in the book of Revelation. If you go way back into the archives, you'll find out there's a lot about the book of Revelation. And then we've got up until now. Those of you that have kept up with us, even somewhere in between thereof, and you still here now, we thank God for you. And those of you that have just came in, we thank God for you. You have came and you subscribed or you followed, we thank God for you. And those of you that are about to subscribe or follow, we thank God for you. And it's to your wisdom. Yes, it's to your wisdom that you might understand and know the Most High. Not only know that, but discern the times, discern why things are the way they are. So we walk in these books. I might not get everything right, but the fact is that we walk together. You're walking, we walking. You say, oh, I see what he's saying. Or you can say, well, he should have said it this. Some of you have came out and said, some things that were very profound. And I thank the Most High for you. And we're going to get into this book of Jubilees, chapter 33 and verse 13. Now, we note that the Most High was very angry with Reuben, who laid with his father's Jacob's wife. I mean, regardless, it's a law. It says, curse he be who lieth with the wife of his father. And it's also contained in the law of Moses. Even Leviticus is in that chapter. I believe the Leviticus. Now, let's go on. And it says in verse 13, and do thou, Moses, command the children of Israel that they observe this word, for it entaileth a punishment. In other words, you have judgment. Judgment is when you're found guilty of a crime. That's judgment. The crime has to be stated, and you have to know the crime in order to be judged, whether you've done that crime or not. And there has to be witnesses that you've done that crime, either the victim or the one that people that have saw you. Yes. And then you're judged, okay, based on this evidence, based on this testimony, based on these witnesses, you are judged. And therefore, after you are judged to have done a crime, then you are sentenced. Now, what is the sentence? It's called punishment also. It says, for it entaileth a punishment of death. For it is rape. Period. It is rape. For this one here is rape. She did not commit adultery. He came in unto her because he was drawn of his own lust and enticed. A very true statement. Now, he said, and it is unclean, and there is no atonement forever to atone for the man who have committed this, for he is to be put to death and slain. There's no atonement for any form of rape. A touch, nah, we ain't talking about that. People touch each other every day. But the fact is, we're talking about actual Copulation. Unwarranted copulation. This is what we're talking about. Now, he goes on, he says, but he is to be put to death, slain, and stoned with stones, and rooted out from the midst of the people of our God. Why? Because it's unclean. God didn't want no uncleanness in the land. And stoned with stones and rooted out from the midst of the people of our God. 14, and for to no man who doeth so in Israel, it is permitted to remain alive a single day on the earth, for he is abominable and unclean. Now, the heathen, the Gentiles, they have laws, and these laws, we even know these laws in the United States, where they give the murderers, those who have without a shadow of a doubt, those who have been accused rightly, they give them all kind of time to remain alive and everything. Whatever, I mean, it's just good as evil, and evil is good. The fact is, and then you have those who are liberals, really liars, that's what I call them, who say it's inhumane to a person that have murdered and heinously murdered a person, and then next thing you know, you let him live even to the next day after you've known and after it's established that this person is guilty of such a crime and judgment have been passed. Now, he said, for he is an abominable and unclean. Now, the woman was made ashamed. He said, and let them not say to Reuben was granted life and forgiveness after he had lain with his father's concubine, and to her also, though she had a husband, and her husband Jacob, his father, was still alive. For until that time there had not been revealed the ordinance and judgment and law in its completeness for all. But in thy days it hath been revealed as a law of seasons and of days, an everlasting law for everlasting generations. And for this law there is no consummation of days, and no atonement for it, but they must both be rooted out in the midst of the nation on the day whereon they committed it. They shall slay them. And do thou, Moses, write it. He was talking, this is the angel of presence talking to Moses. This is who was giving Moses these laws. Write it down for Israel that they might observe it and do according to these words. See, this is why he didn't want Israel to marry. One of the reasons why he don't want Israel to marry the pagan nations. Don't want them to marry them. Didn't want you to go with these who believe in such things. You have such tribes here in the United States, it said in Alaska, that they swap wives. Then you got people in Africa that swap wives. And God says, not so. This is not to be. Even in Egypt, they did the same thing in certain parts. He said, write it down for Israel that they might observe it and do according to these words and not commit a sin unto death. For the I am our God is judge, who respecteth not persons and accepteth not gifts. So there was adultery committed here. Not only he lay with his father's wife, but she allowed him, not knowing who it was, when she uncovered and found out it wasn't just a stranger or someone else, she hollered. He said, and tell them these words of the covenant, that they may hear and observe and be on their guard with respect to them, and not be destroyed and rooted out of the land for an uncleanness and an abomination and a contamination and a pollution. They all are they who commit it on earth before our God. Everybody. Not only just Israel, he's talking about everybody, whether you have the law or not, whether you believe it or not. He said, it's not yours, don't do it. And if he's not yours, woman, don't do it. Now, there is no greater sin than the fornication or the adultery they commit on earth. For Israel is a holy nation unto the I am, its God, a nation of inheritance, and a priestly and royal nation for his own possession, and there shall no uncleanness appear in the midst of the holy nation. Now, this is the whole mission of Israel, to be holy before the world. Now, God is going to get this. He's going to get it in the end. He's already shown us where he's going to get it. Yes, And Israel shall, or should I say Jacob shall rule the whole earth. Yes. Forever. And be with their God. That's what he says. Now, he said in the midst of, and in the third year of this 6th week, Jacob and all his sons went and dwelt in the house of Abram, near Isaac his father, and Rebekah his mother. And these were the names of the sons of Jacob. The first was Reuben. It's kind of bad. Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. The sons of Leah. Now you have the ones that are very significant, Levi and Judah. Very significant in the history of Jacob. Now the sons of Leah and the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Gad and Asher, and Dinah, the daughter of Leah, the only daughter of Jacob. The only daughter of Jacob. He didn't have no girls, just her. And I could see why her brother was so fond of her. Yes. And they came and bowed themselves to Isaac and Rebekah. And when they saw them, they blessed Jacob and all his sons. And Isaac rejoiced exceedingly, for he saw the sons of Jacob, his younger son, and he blessed him. Your granddaddy was proud. He was glad to see them. We're going to read a little bit of 34, chapter 34. And in the 6th year of this week, of this 44th Jubilee, 44 times 49, that's how many years it was. Jacob sent his sons to pasture their sheep, and his servants with them to the pastures of Shechem. And the 7 kings of the Amorites assembled themselves together against him to slay them, hiding themselves under the trees, and to take their cattle as a prey. And Jacob and Levi, or Jacob and Levi, and Judah and Joseph were in the house with Isaac their father, for his spirit was sorrowful. And they could not, because his son, his firstborn son, laid with his wife. I mean, a man could be sorrowful that he wanted to delete his son. I mean, and delete his wife also. This thing ought not to be mostly in Israel. He said, for his spirit was sorrowful. And they could not leave sorrowful. They could not leave him. And Benoni was the youngest, and for this reason remained with his father. Lord, I'm keeping my baby, man. You can go what you want. My baby boy going to be with me. Yes. And there came the kings of Taphu, the kings of Arisa, and the king of Saragan, and the kings of Silo, and the kings of Gaias, and the kings of Bethroran, and the king of Manassasca, and all those who dwell in these mountains, who dwell in the woods in the land of Canaan. There was a lot of mountains there. Hold up now. Is there a lot of mountains in Israel as we see today? Do your research. Look at it. You got some mountains, but you don't have, as he said, dwell in these mountains. And there were many mountains here. And they announced this to Jacob, saying, behold, the kings of the Amorites have surrounded thy sons and plundered their herds. And he arose from his house, and his 3 sons and all the servants of his father and his own servants. He went against them with 6,000 men. That's how many men he had serving him. I mean, they would say serving. This is a heathen thing. But the fact it was a job to tend the sheep, to tend the goats, to get this thing right. He was a king. Jacob really was a king. And those who were around were serving, that they might eat, that they might have clothing and shelter. So they surrounded themselves with these men, because what's going to happen? I mean, when you have food there, people are going to gather around the food. Okay? They were working. They were employees. But yet they had to protect their livelihood. Now, so he had 6,000 men who carried swords, and he slew them in the pastures of Shechem, and pursued, and the Most High was with him, and pursued those who fled, and he slew them with the edge of the sword, and he slew Arisa, Taphu, Saragan, and Silo, and Amaniska and Gagas and recovered his herds. God blessed him, and he prevailed over them and imposed tribute on them. In other words, he made them pay taxes. So you're going to do all this to me, then we're going to rule. You're going to pay some taxes. They lived peaceably before, but these kings decide, and look at the heathen today, what they have done to Israel. Gone, what they have done to Jacob. And ships and carried about and yokes upon the necks and even taken the resources of the land. And on them that they should pay him tribute, 5 fruit products of their land. And he built Robo and Timnateres. And he returned in peace and made peace with them. This is a good man here. He made peace with them, and they became his servants until the day that he and his sons went down into Egypt. And over all that time until the time of famine, they went down into Egypt. Hold up now. They went down into Egypt? Now, when you go away from Egypt, you're going up on the continent. Now, they went down. That stands for some research. Those of you who are listening to me, and you know where I'm coming from with this. You know the 13th chapter of Genesis. You know the maps. Pay attention. Now, he says now, and in the 7th year of this week, he sent Joseph to learn about the welfare of his brothers from his house to the land of Shechem. And he found them in the land of Dothan. And they dealt treacherously with him and formed a plot against him to slay him. This is not Benoni, this is Joseph. But changing their minds, they sold him to the Ishmaelites. And they brought him down into Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, the eunuch of Pharaoh, the chief of the cooks. Now they saying Potiphar. They sold him to Potiphar, the eunuch of Pharaoh, the eunuch of Pharaoh, the chief of the cooks, priest of the city of Liu. Now, Potiphar, didn't Potiphar supposed to have a wife in the book of Genesis? Now, this here says he was a eunuch, a eunuch. He was the chief of the cooks, a priest. Okay, all right. We're going to leave it right there, and we're going to come back with you. I could go on, but it's getting good. But we're going to say, now, we want you, now what you hear on the end is, I love her music. Queen Omega. Yes, I decided to put that on the end because it fits the situation. And I thank her that she hadn't said nothing, but I thank God that, this is not, I'm not licensed to that music or anything at the end of my videos, but I thank Queen Omega for let the Most High use her. And with that, we're going to say peace. No matter how life goes, one thing I know.